Thank you so much for taking time out of your day for to join the Needy Med special topic webinar, 10 Myths About Raynaud's Phenomenon, Getting the Facts for a Warmer, More Comfortable Life, presented by our partners, the Raynaud Association. My name is Carla. I'm the Director of User Engagement at Needy Meds. And before we get started with today's presentation, I'm going to offer a few tips so you can make the most out of it. First of all, if you do have questions, you can type them into your questions or chat section for some of you of the GoToWebinar control panel. If you can ask those questions at any time, but we do reserve answering questions until the end. If we don't get the chance to answer your specific question, we will follow up with you by email. But of course, we will also provide the contact information for Needy Meds and the Raynaud Association at the end. So you can feel free to reach out to either of those organizations at the end of the presentation. As you saw on the first screen, you can find some materials we thought you'd be interested in that handout section of your GoToWebinar control panel. Also, the good news is that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the Needy Meds YouTube channel. That's super helpful. That means you can share it with others that may be interested and revisit it if you wanted to check out and reference the material covered during today's presentation. So let's get started with what is Needy Meds. For those of you not familiar with us, Needy Meds is a national nonprofit founded more than 2 decades ago. And what you're looking at on our screen is our official mission statement. But simply put, Needy Meds connects people to healthcare savings resources. And we do that free and anonymously through our website, needymeds.org, and our helpline, 1-800-503-6897. And don't worry, I will put that contact information up at the end of the presentation. I always like to put up a screenshot of the Needy Meds homepage, needymeds.org, because our website is the face of our organization, but it also gives me the opportunity to point out a few things, such as if you are looking for healthcare savings resources, check out the aptly named Healthcare Savings tab on the top. Right next to that, you will find the Education tab. When time allows, I recommend checking that out too, because that's where you can sign up to receive our monthly newsletter. You can order educational materials and see what other webinars are scheduled. I mentioned that today's webinar is being recorded and will be added to our YouTube channel, and you can find a link to that on the top right of our homepage with the rest of the social media icons. It's the third one from your left. From the left. So anyway, as you saw a few slides ago, a big part of the Needy Meds mission is to educate and empower those seeking affordable health care. And we define education really in 2 ways: by educating people about Needy Meds, of course, and the resources we offer, but also by letting them know about other resources that will help them, their family, their clients, or their patients in their health journey, which is why we are so pleased to have our guests from Raynaud's Association here with us today. So before I introduce Jan, let me just tell you a little bit about Raynaud's Association. They are also a national nonprofit. Their mission is to provide support and education to the millions of sufferers of Raynaud's phenomenon and exaggerated sensitivity to cold temperatures. And I encourage you, just like I encourage you to check out the Needy Meds website, please check out the Raynaud's Association website. It's raynauds.org. I will tell you, not only is it chock full of information and especially accurate, up-to-date, and useful information, but it is really easy to navigate your way through it. It's super user-friendly, so check that out. So now it's my pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, Jan Nitty. Jan is going to talk to us about those 10 myths about Raynaud's phenomenon and how you can get the facts for a warmer, more comfortable life. So let me tell you just a little bit about Jan. She is a board member, as you can see on the screen, of Raynaud's Association and a member of the Scleroderma Foundation for over 20 years. Jan was actually diagnosed with systemic diffuse scleroderma and secondary Raynaud's back in 2002. Since then, she has been a patient advocate and involved in education and raising awareness. She holds a master's degree in public health and a bachelor's in biology medical technology. So, without further ado, and I always say this hopefully seamlessly, I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic and the screen to Jan. And as she grabs the screen, I will remind everybody you can submit questions at any time during Jan's presentation by typing them into the question section. For some of you, it may be the chat section of your GoToWebinar control panel. And Jan, you should be able to go ahead and click on a little button that popped up asking if you'd like to share your screen. So getting back to those questions, again, for some of you, you'll be submitting them into the question section. For some of you, it may be the chat section. And we're going to do our best to get to as many questions as possible. But if we don't get the chance to answer your question, again, we will follow up with you by email. So let me make sure I'm passing the screen to Jan. Oop, I jumped ahead. And Jan, you should be able to go ahead and grab the screen. A little icon would have popped up asking if you'd like to share your screen. So now as Jan gets to those, and we may have lost Jan, she may be logging back in. Oh, you're still here? Okay, great. And as Jan grabs the screen, I will remind everybody that we did upload, I say we, but it's really Jan, uploaded handouts into that handout section of your GoToWebinar control panel. There are 5 documents that we thought you'd be interested in about the Raynaud's Association and about Raynaud's phenomenon. So Jan, were you able to go ahead and grab that screen?
Yes. Good afternoon. Yes, I did. And I actually show that. Do you see my presentation up?
I don't. Let's get some feedback from the audience to see whether or not you guys are looking at my screen or Jan's screen, because I still see my screen. But bear with me, and it's not a disaster if that's the case, because what I can do is simply I do have your PowerPoint slide deck on my desktop, so I can just click through it for you, which would not be a problem at all. So bear with me. Here we go. Okay. So everybody, hopefully you can see Jan's screen. I can see it now, Jan, so why don't you go ahead and take it away. Thanks, everybody, for your patience. Oh, it looks like it popped away again. Bear with me. You know what I'm going to do, Jan? I'm going to go ahead and open your PowerPoint slide deck. So bear with me. And I'm going to grab the screen back. And I will click through for you, Jan. You should be looking at your PowerPoint slide deck now. Is that right? So it does look like we lost Jan. Sorry, everybody, for the little bit of technical difficulty. Jan is logging back in, and I see she's joining us in just a moment. Meanwhile, I do want to remind everybody that in the handout section, as I said, there's 5 documents related to Raynaud's Association as well as Raynaud's phenomenon. But if you are interested in receiving some brochures, drug discount cards, and pamphlets about Needy Meds, you can find them on our website under that education tab. There's a subscription center. You can sign up for email alerts, but you will also be able to order any of our materials if you like. But you can always drop me an email as well, and my contact information will be at the end of the presentation. So Jan, I see that you've logged in, and what you're looking at with the rest of the audience should be the first slide of your PowerPoint presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and click through it for you if you don't mind.
Yes, thank you very much. I am definitely having technical difficulties.
No problem. No problem. We're ready to go. So I'll go ahead and pass the mic to Jan.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here this afternoon to share with you my learnings and the education that I have received over the last 20 years being a part of the Raynaud's Association. And I'd like to thank you all for coming. Before I get started talking about the 10 myths about Raynaud's phenomenon, I'd like to introduce you to our mascot, Shivers. And you can see by the screen, it's a bird. And there actually is a bird in the Galapagos Island that we've named Shivers because of his purple feet. Shivers has a video that I'd like to bring your attention to later in the call, where you can see how Shiver goes to the doctors and wants to talk about his cold feet and what to do. And it's very educational and actually very clever the way that this is set up. So I just wanted to introduce you to Shivers and let you know that October is Raynaud's Awareness Month and how we help educate and support people with Raynaud's. We'll talk about that again a little bit later in the slide, but let's actually get into the presentation here. And if we can go to the first myth. Raynaud's is a rare disease. You know, Raynaud's, the discovery of Raynaud's dates back to the 1800s, where a doctor, a French physician by the name of Maurice Raynaud, had a woman that came to see him with cold hands. And they had no understanding back then of what was causing it and how to address it. So that's where actually Raynaud's was first discovered back in the 1800s. Since then, it has been shown that there are about 5 to 10% of the United States population that has Raynaud's. That does not differentiate primary from secondary Raynaud's, which we'll talk about a little later, but it is not a rare disease. For something to be a rare disease, it has to be less than 200,000 people in a geographic area in the United States. We have well over 200,000 active cases that we know about of Raynaud's. And in fact, 1/10% of the US population doesn't even know that they have it. And we'll talk about why that has happened and what you can do to address somebody that might have Raynaud's and not be aware of it. You can go to the next slide, Carly. Okay, so myth number 2, there is a formal test to diagnose Raynaud's. Okay, there actually is not a formal test, but there are a lot of different things that a doctor can do to help determine if you have Raynaud's. The first thing I just want everyone to understand is doctors, I've worked with physicians for many years, and they go by what information they're given, including pictures. So if you have pictures of your hands, of your fingers changing colors, or whenever you think you're having a Raynaud's attack, bring those pictures to the doctor. And that can help quite a bit in determining if it is a Raynaud's, a true Raynaud's. There are other things out there that doctors can do to try and see if you have Raynaud's. I did a webinar once, and we had people put their fingers in cold water to see if it would trigger a Raynaud's attack. So the doctor might consider doing a cold water trigger test on you, or even thermal imaging, which can go in and look at your hands and whether or not there's adequate blood flow getting to the hands. For secondary Raynaud's, there's testing. It's called a nail fold capilloscopy. I've had that done, actually. When I was first diagnosed with Raynaud's, I went to go see the rheumatologist, and he took my fingers and put them underneath the microscope. And for the longest time, I guess the first or 2 visits, I really didn't understand what he was looking for, but then I came to notice that people with Raynaud's have compromised capillary blood flow to their fingers if it's secondary. So that's one test that the doctor might do in addition to a test called an anti-nuclear antibody test, which is a blood test, which is used to rule out whether or not you have primary Raynaud's or secondary Raynaud's, based upon if it's positive and there are autoantibodies checked in your blood. We'll get into that a little bit later. I don't want to confuse anyone about that, but basically, just so you know, there is no formal test for Raynaud's. And myth number 3, Raynaud's affects only fingers and toes. I can tell you that I've had Raynaud's on my tongue, my nose, my ears. I haven't had them on my breasts, but or sexual organs, but there is data that shows that that can happen. So please don't limit yourself to thinking that you can only get Raynaud's on your fingers and your toes. Next slide. This is a really important slide, and I want to hopefully, if you don't understand something in it, let's do a Q&A later, because it's really important to understand what your thresholds are. Now, for people to have cold hands, that's one thing, but to have color changes is really a sign that there's a medical issue going on. And even though data shows that 90% of people with Raynaud's have normal vascular function and circulation, there's that 10% that secondary Raynaud's could fall under, where we do not have proper circulation. And it's all explained in a automatic system that we have in our body called a flight or fight response. And what that is when our body is exposed to a threat or stress, the blood flow will be taken from the extremities and brought to the vital organs for survival. During those times, the blood vessels are constricted in the hands and different areas of your body, and that's what happens with Raynaud's. We stay in that response. We get caught up in that flight and fight response where our extremities are losing circulation. With normal patients, normal people, that response goes back to normal after the threat or the stress is released, but we can get hung up in that area with Raynaud's. So just to know that there is a normal function of the body that called the flight and fight response that is among all people that have this automatic system in their body, but with Raynaud's, it's an exaggerated form of it. Next slide. Okay, so Raynaud's is not an allergy to the cold. You know, I wish that was the case, but that's not the case, because we could just get something for that, right? For being allergic. There are different conditions out there that cause symptoms of Raynaud's. One is called cold urticaria, where you actually have a rash that develops after you're exposed to cold, but that's not what Raynaud's is. So just know that it is not an allergy to cold. Raynaud's is merely a nuisance and not a medical condition. Okay, so let's talk about primary and secondary Raynaud's. Primary Raynaud's is Raynaud's that occurs from no underlying medical condition. Some people just get it and they have it, and they can make some lifestyle changes to help address the primary Raynaud's or get medication to help with it. Secondary Raynaud's is very different in the fact that there's an underlying medical condition that's causing you to have these Raynaud's attacks, and if it's not taken appropriate, if you don't take it to a medical advisor, you might wind up having some vascular damage to your fingers. So you really want to make sure if you have primary or secondary Raynaud's. And the best way to do that is to go and see your primary care physician or to go and see a rheumatologist. Rheumatologists are the doctors that are involved in autoimmune responses, and Raynaud's would fall under that as a secondary condition from some kind of an underlying condition. There's a lot of misunderstanding from the family and friends. I'm going to talk about that a little later, how we can help them understand what we're going through. And yes, it is a nuisance to have Raynaud's, but it's also medically needed for us to address it. And in addressing it, we have to avoid attacks. There's temperature changes, there's stress and lifestyle changes that we can change in order to help us have less attacks and less severe attacks. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. I just wanted to give you an overall picture of that it is a medical condition. So there's many different visual episodes of Raynaud's. You know, there's the patriotic white, blue, and red colors. For me, when I get a Raynaud's attack, it starts with my hands and my feet going completely white, followed by a blue response. My fingers and my feet actually turn blue due to blood flow inadequacies. And it will stay like that. That's the Raynaud's attack for me. That's where I experience pain. And I know that I have to get myself out of whatever condition that's causing it, be it stress or the cold. And then there's other times where I can go into a kind of a muddled pinkish red pattern. But the scope of this is to know that when you're back into the red color change, that's when your Raynaud's attack should end. Again, taking pictures, trying to really capture what's going on during the episode so that you can address whether it's a stress coming from stress or from cold temperatures, how to address the episode and reduce it. Myth number 8, the only treatment for Raynaud's is to stay warm. Yes, that's very important, but it's not really the only thing you can do. There are medications out there that can increase blood flow. I just want to share with you my story. So I started, my first symptom with scleroderma was Raynaud's, and I went to the doctor, and he put me on Prozac, and I couldn't understand why he did that. Prozac is a antidepressant, and it's used for people to handle stress and whatnot. I was working in a very high energy position at my job and handling a lot of different stress factors in my life, as we all do. And that one drug really helped make a difference for me. And as time went by, I noticed that I needed to add other medications, including a calcium channel blocker. Calcium channel blockers, actually, what they help to do is they help to dilate blood vessels and push blood flow through the extremities. So, for example, I was taking Procardia there for a while, and now I've switched to an erectile dysfunction drug called sildenafil, which is used for secondary Raynaud's that causes digital ulcers. So for primary Raynaud's and secondary Raynaud's, there are medications that you can talk to your doctor about, in addition to if you have secondary Raynaud's, the erectile dysfunction drugs actually help, like the Viagra out there and the Cialis. When I first, during the first couple of years when I was diagnosed, one of my fingers was just purple, and I couldn't get it to get out of that purple color. So my doctor gave me Viagra, and it was amazing how that worked. Within 3 days, my finger was back to color, and I didn't have pain. So just think outside the box when you think of what medications you might want to try. There is a chemical, there is a surgical procedure called a digital sympathectomy that's used in most severe cases. Like, for example, if you had secondary Raynaud's and you were having a problem with one finger, and it was the last resort for you is to get a digital sympathectomy, where you really need to look at what are your options. Are you going to lose the finger? Is there a way that the doctor could go in? And what they do in a digital sympathectomy, they go in there and they actually manipulate the sympathetic nervous system so that it produces more blood flow to the fingers. So that's something you really would talk to about. You would talk to about your physician, and there are some pros and cons to it. Some people say that the nerves that are cut grow back. So you really want to consider if you're considering doing the digital sympathectomy. There are self-help techniques that are used, meditation, visualizations that you have blood flow going through your hands. And of course, there's natural and holistic remedies when not clinically verified. And it's really important for us to understand that if we're going to start, I have both a naturopathic doctor and a regular Western doctor and Western medicine doctor, and I use both of them, but I make sure that I talk to both of them about what remedies I'm using so that there are not any conflicting results from my using both drugs and holistic remedies. Okay, myth number 9, Raynaud's is only an issue in cold climates and cold seasons. You know, it's so funny because I lived in northern Jersey, and I was just having such a hard time with the winter. I was dressing in layers. I couldn't even move my car to turn the steering wheel. I had so many layers on, filled with heat and everything. So I thought about coming here to a warmer state, which I now live in Florida. And there are good things about that, but there are also things that we need to consider, like air conditioning is a big problem out here because it's always hot. And then swimming, certain things that still will trigger a Raynaud's attack. So if you're thinking about it just being exposure to cold, it is. However, moving might not be the best solution for you. There are a lot of different things to consider. I mean, I can get I can have a Raynaud's attack just with a cold breeze going by me in the air, or even holding a cold glass, or even drinking a cold glass. So, of course, it's not just cold climates, it can be exposure to any kind of cold. And drastic temperature changes. I would go from a building that was air conditioned to outside, and my fingers would turn completely black. That's a Raynaud's attack from going from cold to hot, obviously. These are things you have to be aware of and how to address those changes. What can you do to minimize those drastic temperature changes, as long, and with stress as well? How do you minimize stress in your life? Okay, Carly. Thank you. Okay, so myth number 10, Raynaud sufferers are likely to lose fingers and toes. That's not really true at all. There's less than 10% that have serious conditions that have complications. Again, those secondary conditions like digital ulcers. And the best way to really look at this is how to avoid things that are going to cause you to have a Raynaud's attack, and what can you change in your lifestyle to help reduce those attacks. Like, for example, when I get up in the morning, I plan my day. Do I have to pack hand warmers? Do I have to pack gloves, a hat? What do I have to bring with me in order to help avoid those attacks? If I know I'm going to be going to the hospital to visit someone, or God forbid, I have to go in the ER, again, those are things I have to think of. Okay, we know ERs are cold. What can I bring with me? Can I bring a heating pad? Can I bring extra warm clothes, heavier socks? What can I bring with me in order to avoid attacks that could happen in that situation? And then lifestyle changes. When you go to a restaurant, maybe it's where you're sitting. Can you move to a warmer spot? When you go out to dinner, maybe bring extra things with you. Let your family members or your friends know, hey, listen, it's a little cold in that restaurant. Maybe we could sit outside, or can we go somewhere where the temperature is a little bit more regulated? There's a lot of ways to just make minor lifestyle changes that could help with these attacks. And here is the Raynaud's Association. I got to tell you, our association is just really so full of knowledge. There's so many different things that we offer. We have our Cold Cuts newsletter, which it's sent out quarterly, and it really gives you a lot of different things that are going on as far as information, new meds that might be out there, how to get in touch with doctors. We actually have on our website, we have a list of rheumatologists that might be available in your area. If you go to our website, you might find that there's a toll-free hotline number you can call, and we give discounts on warming products. All of the board members test products that are sent to us, and we, as sufferers of Raynaud's, examine those products and give opinions on whether or not we think they work. So you have to know that the things that we offer on our website, you get a discount, as well as you've had people evaluate that suffer from Raynaud's. We have different discussion forums. We have Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, all the different things out there where you can go and talk to other frosties. Educational materials, the handouts that we provided, actually the FAQ document and the symptom circles, they all give valuable information. They're just two of the examples of the 5 different handouts we have that give valuable information. So again, it's Raynaud's Awareness Month. Please go to our website, and we do look for membership if you're interested. It's well worth the price. I think it's like, we ask for $25 membership fee for the year. Just the information that you get from the Raynaud's Association really will help you look at your Raynaud's from different perspectives and give you another eye to see things through. Carly?
Jan, thank you so much for taking time to share a little bit about your story, as well as the top 10 myths about this phenomenon, and tools, resources, and tips for leading a more comfortable and warmer life. I will get to the questions segment of today's presentation momentarily, because we do have a bunch of questions coming in. But I really want to stress please check out Raynaud.org. And I absolutely encourage everybody to follow them on social media and check out the Cold Cuts e-newsletters. Really informative. So Jan also provided some ways to stay in touch with them. Of course, again, it's Raynaud.org. They are a nonprofit, so feel free to support them with a donation or a membership. And at the bottom, you're looking at other ways to stay in touch with, as they call, Frosties. And again, that's through a lot of social media platforms and the discussion forum. So while Jan was giving her presentation, I went ahead and went on YouTube to check out Shivers, the
Yeah.
Raynaud's Association mascot. So I'm going to do my best to show that right now. I'm not sure if it's going to work, so bear with me to see if this works. I'm going to go ahead and play it. Let me just make my volume as loud as it can be, because I think this would be a really cool opportunity, and it's only, as you can see, barely a minute and a half. So I'm going to attempt to play it. If it doesn't work, I'll tell you how to find this video on your own. So let's see how we do. So unfortunately, I'm not getting any of the sound coming through, but you can see how fantastically animated it is and what fun it is. Like I said, it's only a minute and a half. So let me show you guys what I did. You just go to YouTube, and what I did was I simply typed in Raynaud's Association Shivers. And at the very top, right there, you will find the 1.5 minute video. So I encourage everybody to check it out, share it with others. It's really informative and just enjoyable to watch. They did a great job with this animation. So sorry I'm not able to get the audio up for you guys, but I'm glad I at least had an opportunity to show you what that looks like. So with that, I want to switch to my PowerPoint slide deck, because one of the things Jen talked about is turning potentially to your healthcare team to talk about medication or other healthcare devices or ways to assist yourself, your family, your friends, loved ones, patients, or clients if they're living with or suffering from Raynaud's. And I want to remind everybody that if you are having trouble affording any of those medications or healthcare expenses, Needy Meds is here to help. What you're looking at on the screen are all of the savings options under that healthcare savings tab on needymeds.org. Check that out. Give our call center counselors a call if you do need some assistance, and don't hesitate to peruse through our website. We also do offer monthly overview webinars. They're less than a half hour, and with those webinars, we talk you through what Needy Meds is, how to find those healthcare savings resources, and we define what each of those categories are. Here's just a reminder of how you can type questions in to that GoToWebinar control panel on your desktop. And as we get to those questions coming in, I will leave up the contact information for the Raynaud's Association. Again, that's Raynaud's.org. Their toll-free helpline is 1-800-280 8055. And if you have any questions, drop them an email to info@raynaud.org. On the bottom of the screen is my email address, as well as the Needy Meds website and our toll-free helpline. So let's get to some of those questions coming in for you, Jan. And one question that came in towards the beginning of your presentation, I think it's an important one, is what is of utmost importance when beginning a new medication for Raynaud's?
Okay, so medication is where doctors go to when we have symptoms, correct? And seeking medication should be a joint effort, not only by you and the physician, but the pharmacist as well. And the reason why I say that is because there's so much information out there on the internet, and we could Google how to increase blood flow to the extremities, and all these different vitamins could come up, or different ways of eating. I've tried them all. I still do some of them, but you need to let the doctor know what you're taking, and not just a B vitamin. Like, really get into if you're taking anything. Some people say beets help. Some people have different foods can help with Raynaud's, or taking niacin, for example. That's a drug you can get. It's not a drug, it's a supplement. But you need to check with your doctor, because sometimes there's a reaction that can happen between supplements and medications. And you have to be very careful that you're not getting side effects because you're overdoing it. Like, for example, I take Prozac, and at the same time, I was reading information about ginkgo biloba, which is a herbal supplement that helps with stress. And I went to my doctor, and I went to the pharmacist, and the pharmacist told me it's the same amount. It's actually the same reaction you're trying to create in your body, and you should not take them together. So that's why your pharmacist is definitely one of your key players with the medications, and he needs to know everything you're taking, and if you discontinue things. And again, another thing is, if the medication's not working for you, you need to tell the doctor to try something different. Could take a couple of times before you see a medication working. And don't expect medications to work right away. It could take a week, month, who knows? Depends on your body. But the big important question here is, always get counsel from your doctor and your pharmacist when looking at medications.
Thank you so much to our audience member for that important question. It gave Jan an opportunity to highlight some important things and stress what I think is a really important point, that to be completely transparent to any of all of the doctors you're seeing about not only what medications that you're taking, but what supplements, because it can be contraindicated. And on Needy Meds, we host a website called bmedwise.org, which is an educational site dedicated to the safe use, storage, and disposal of medicines for better health. And we have a lot of information about how to stay safe when it comes to over the counter medications. Just because you can get something without a prescription doesn't mean that it's not a serious medication, and it doesn't mean it won't have a serious effect on you. So I think that's really important, and I'm glad we had the opportunity for Jan to drive home that point. So, Jan, another important question that came in, and you did address this a little bit, but again, an opportunity to stress this. What information can we provide to our caregivers or doctors regarding a Raynaud's attack or trigger? What do we show our doctors?
So, one of the things that I think a lot of people that know me first struggled with was, what does it feel like to have a Raynaud's attack? It's hard to explain the feeling, the pain. However, you can explain to them the process of what's going on. That during stress and cold, my hands get cold and they turn colors, and then I have pain. And um, it's almost like telling someone when you get a cut on your finger, like a little paper cut. What does that feel like? How annoying, how pain that is. That's kind of like, for me, that explains like a little ulcer starting. So I try to explain as best I can what I'm feeling, what I'm going through, how my body is reacting. Do I freeze up? My hands get tight? These are things that I think our caregivers and our doctors need to know, because again, the more information they have, the better. And I think it's important to let all the people around you know what you're feeling, because they don't it's hard to understand if you're not going through it. But if you can come up with a certain circumstance, like I use that paper cut a lot, and it's, oh yeah, I get it. I get that feeling and how that hurts and it's annoying. Just to give them some idea of what you're going through, I think is very helpful for them to understand where you're at.
That's so important. And thank you for that question. And I'm also going to take a moment, if you don't mind, to show everybody, because I've been encouraging everybody that's joining us today to visit raynauds.org. And I wanted to show everybody a particular destination that I think is really helpful. Sorry, I just want to put up Raynaud.org and take a look at this. This is Raynaud's .org, and just going to the Getting Support tab, look at all these helpful things: the frequently asked questions, the Raynaud's quiz, living with Raynaud's. Here's the newsletter we were talking about. Anyway, it's chock full of information, and it's also easy to navigate, as you can see. So I just wanted to give an opportunity to showcase this. Jan, we're going to wrap up with one other question that came in. And again, you did address this. This did come in a little bit earlier during your presentation. But I figured I'd just ask you because, again, it gives you an opportunity to drive this home. Somebody asked, does Raynaud's only occur with your hands and feet?
Yes, and of course, there's other areas that it can affect. We might overlook them, but you can get them on your nose, you can get them on your ears, even your genital areas. Women breastfeeding, women can get it on their nipples. There's different areas that you can have a Raynaud's attack. One of the things that I just want to point out, it just came to my mind, I think, because I'm in Tampa and we had that hurricane here. You know, when you don't have control over the cold air, I take a muff, a nose muff, like a whole thing. Even those masks that people are wearing, that people still wear to protect themselves from COVID, unfortunately, they keep your nose warm. There's things that you can come up with that can actually help keep other parts of your extremities from having a Raynaud's attack. I wear hats in the house if I have to cover my ears, my nose, my lips, whatever you can do to try and minimize the attacks of other areas besides your hands and your feet.
That's great advice. That's great advice to not only don't wait for it to occur. If you know you're prone to an attack or you're in a situation where you think you will be triggered, to get ahead of it, as you said, put a mask on, put a hat on, do whatever you need to do to make yourself more comfortable. And I did say that that was going to be the last question, but I think we're actually going to end with just a comment from an audience member who says that her doctor asks her basically at every visit, how many episodes does she have per day? And I think this is important because she says she finds this question kind of useless because she works in a cold atmosphere and her hands are basically always blue. So I think probably being as specific as you can, and Jan said taking pictures, taking notes, and being as specific as you can when it comes to relaying information not only to your healthcare provider and your pharmacist. Jan pointed out rely on your pharmacist as one of the members of your healthcare team, but by sharing information with your friends, neighbors, and loved ones so that they know how to support you and ensure that at gatherings you can be as comfortable as possible. So, with that, we are going to wrap up. I want to offer a big thank you to our audience members for taking time out of their day to join us and participate in today's presentation. The 10 myths about Raynaud's phenomenon and ways to lead a warmer and more comfortable life, presented by my friend and colleague Jan, representing Raynaud's Association. And thank you, Jan, for taking time out of your day to share your expertise, story, resources, and tips with Needy Meds users. Thanks so much, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Stay warm. Take care.